comes down to this one penalty kick. Can the young woman break the glass ceiling and prove once and for all that a female can be just as good an athlete as a male?
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender rules, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo. What? Just because I'm a meathead doesn't mean I'm not a feminist.
Knuckles' statement has 3 parts to it. Each part supposedly proves the next one that then leads to the conclusion. If I were to rewrite his argument to be more clear, it would be this. Calling attention to the breaking of gender roles is the same as saying this is an exception / not the status quo, and this inherently undermines feminism. Noticeably, Knuckles doesn't explain how something being an exception, orange 2, leads to the conclusion, green 3. It's implied. It might seem intuitive to many people, but that doesn't make it true. And in truth, it's a ridiculous leap in logic. Implying something is an exception and the status quo does not undermine pushing for change in society. This is due to the simple fact that acknowledging a problem doesn't mean you want to perpetuate it, and in fact, acknowledging a problem is the first step to solving it. If you acknowledge that you've never run a 7-minute mile and you want to get healthy, does that undermine your goal of running a 7-minute mile and improving your health? Of course not. It will be exceptional, and yet it's not undermining your goal of fitness in the slightest. The same holds true for societal goals such as the American Civil Rights Movement. MLK said in his I Have a Dream speech,
"But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later."
Despite calling attention to how Black Americans are being oppressed in society, they gained more rights, and culturally they were thought of as equals more so than before. The year after the speech, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, and since then we've seen Black Americans have great success in society, becoming president or even rich celebrities. This is the opposite of what Knuckles would expect to happen if his hypothesis were true. And just to really drive the point home, if you agree with Knuckles, then you must tell MLK that his I Have a Dream speech undermines the concept of racial equality. What an absolutely ridiculous thing to suggest. And plenty of people in the comments are just glazing this logical fallacy, so hopefully my video puts that to rest. That was the main point of the video, but I do have some other interesting things to share. Since I was on the topic, it got me thinking about how many people say that men are better than women at all areas of athleticism. Some even going far as to think an untrained man can beat a trained woman.
Do you think you could beat a female in any pro sport?
Oh, you're going to make some ladies mad. Yes, ma'am, I can beat you in anything that you do.
Do you think you could beat a female professional athlete in any sport?
Yes.
All of them.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
100%.
Hey, yo.
Yes.
We're talking cleaning the kitchen, cooking food, probably not, but anything else, yeah.
If it's an endurance sport, I could probably beat her.
What about cross country?
It would probably be equal. It's like a sports car going fast as hell, but you got a semi that has a lot of fuel.
And yes, that is an untrained obese man saying that. The video goes on, but you get the idea. All these men are just extremely wrong. Compare the time of the beginner man running a mile to pro woman. It's not even close. And within each weight class for bench press, compare the untrained man to the advanced and elite woman. As you can see, the advanced women clearly surpass the untrained men. Genetics are a factor, but they don't completely eliminate the need for training, as these men seem to be under the impression of. But it's not just people who think men are better than women at all athletics. While writing this video, Google tried to correct me, and it wasn't even incorrect grammar. But that's actually not true. There is one area where women have more athletic ability than men, and that is endurance. In ultra running, women perform better on average than men. And in ultra-distance swimming, women also perform better than men. This article cites a number of studies. This adds to the irony of that obese man saying he could beat women in endurance of all categories. Why is this, you may ask? Unfortunately, I personally can't say. It's too complicated for me to understand, but here is an article if you are interested in further readings. Although women have this one athletic advantage, it doesn't translate to popular interactive sports because they aren't built around endurance. And by interactive sport, I mean a game where you can dynamically engage with your opponent. What you do affects what they do. Races are athletic, but you can't stop other players from scoring a goal like you can in soccer. With that in mind, it would be cool for someone to invent a new interactive sport based around endurance that favored women's biology. It would be cool because women would be breaking a glass ceiling of having an athletic interactive game they are best at, and there is a lot of unexplored game design space that could create new and interesting moments for fans. Hopefully this video gives someone the idea because I don't know how to design such a game and I'm very curious to see what could come of it. Amy mentions breaking the glass ceiling, so let's talk about that. Here's an inspirational story I read that I'll present in a Zach D Films format. In 1966, Roberta Gibb was told it was physically impossible for a woman to complete a marathon, so her application was denied. She refused to listen and ran anyway, finishing better than 2/3 of the other men and debunking the myth in spectacular fashion. And if you think discrimination against women in sports is only ancient history, think again. According to this article, until 2014, women were banned from doing the ski jump in the Olympics. While the official reason was lack of interest and technical merit, I think this was a lie. This article from 2008 highlights that although the IOC stated women's ski jump doesn't meet the threshold of having 2 world championships, other events have been added to the Olympics for less. And personally, I want to highlight that this is an arbitrary rule. The IOC made the rules and they can change them. They are not beholden to anyone but themselves, therefore any attempts to shift blame is nonsensical. And there was interest. The article says that there were more women ski jumpers across more countries than other sports that were already added to the Olympics. So if this was a lie, what was the real reason for banning women from the ski jump? According to Why Women's Ski Jump Was Banned by Business Insider, it was because of the medical myth that ski jumping and other athletic activities would somehow damage a woman's uterus. In 2005, Gianfranco Casper, president of the International Ski Federation, told NPR, "Don't forget, it's like jumping down from, let's say, about 2 meters on the ground about 1,000 times a year, which seems to not be appropriate for ladies from a medical point of view." And the same man, 5 years later and still president, reiterated this idea, saying that the female uterus might burst during landing from a ski jump. So clearly this was not a fringe belief, it had power over the policymakers of the event. The ban on women's ski jump is no longer hypocritical because it's not a thing anymore. But back then it was hypocritical because men were allowed to compete events such as boxing that caused damage to their health, but women were not. People have known that boxing caused brain damage since the 1930s. With that in mind, why the double standard? Why are men allowed to compete in sports that might harm their bodies but women are not? This comparison suggests that the ski jump ban was never about health, and the statement that it would damage a woman's uterus was a lie, or at the very least not something anyone actually cared about. The statement merely existed to justify the emotional reason for the ban. It made people uncomfortable to see women being athletic. In conclusion, I think we can confidently say that the feminism police have the right to arrest Knuckles for his statements and any of the other people who say ridiculous things about women and athletics.